Anything you allow to continue in your life for a period of time, there is a bond that develops between you and it, and the deeper the bond, the more difficult it is to break it. Isn't the funny thing about being bound to something? You don't really know how tied you are to it until you get ready to give it up. In fact, I've known people who say about cigarettes, I've known people who said, I'm not addicted. I could quit whenever I wanted to, until they try to quit. I've known people who said, I'm not an alcoholic. I have an occasional drink, but I am not an alcoholic. They don't even know that they're addicted until they try to quit. You can become bound to something and don't even know that it has become knit inside of you. And you can become bound to something that contradicts your destiny. But eventually, over a period of time, if you are called of God, you will have a head-on collision with destiny, and God will require you to give up something that becomes very difficult for you to give up. Anytime you're tied to something and somebody brings it up, that thing that we can bring up and you don't say anything about, you cool about it, but that thing that we bring up, you get hot and defensive. What do you mean, alcoholic? We're just friends. You all always think evil about everything. We're just friends. Annoyed, aggravated, insulted, addicted. I'm wondering tonight if there's anything that you have inadvertently, accidentally, or on purpose, maybe throughout some cataclysmic problem that broke out in your life, you found yourself in a situation and now the problem is over, but you're still bound to the thing that you used as a crutch. You know, trouble and maladies and adversity create situations and creates attachments, and sometimes the attachment is supposed to help you get through a season, and the season is over, but the attachment remains. And you can be a good person in a bad situation and become bound. And you never know how tied you are to something until you have to give it up. Isn't it funny how God knows you? Knows things even when you're in denial. So we're talking about soul ties tonight, and we're talking about denial. Soul ties, those bonds that are created between you and other people and other things and other situations where you become tied, dependent or codependent upon them and find it very difficult to separate. They're not always sexual soul ties. There can be emotional soul ties. Emotional soul ties where you become dependent upon somebody, have attachments and ideas and concepts that the person doesn't always even have to know. You'd be surprised how people play mind games with themselves. Illusions and fantasies and ideas and concepts just to help them get through life because they are so lonely or so desperate or so disappointed, so alienated that they create scenarios in their own mind for their own pleasure and enjoyment to console them and comfort them through a crisis, and then find it very difficult to give up what they started. That's why whenever possible, it's always better to preach to somebody to prevent them from the attachment, because it's easier to prevent it than it is to break the pattern once it starts. Soul ties. It's always better to take your burdens to the Lord and lay them on the altar and develop relationships with him, because sometimes in a crisis you can cry on a shoulder that you find yourself wrapped around. Soul ties, ties that make you miserable to break and unable to keep, trapped between two polarities. Can't do with them, can't do without them. Abraham, the great man of faith, the patriarch of Judaism, the father of faith, is tied to a situation that he can't do with and he can't do without. And to that he adds anger, which is denial, because he doesn't want to admit that he can't break away. And even to God he lies and says this is about the son, but God says, oh no, it's not totally about the son. You've become bond to the bondwoman. We like to think that praise is hallelujah. You know, that praises. We like to think that praise is just lifting our hands and Shabbaking God, halal, to just dance in his presence, to prostrate. That's nice. But the third dimension of praise is not about a bodily exercise, a clapping of hands, a dancing or laying prostrate in the floor. The third dimension of praise is when there is something in your life to which you have become extremely attached. And God says to you, give it up. Now, when you hit this third dimension, you can't dance over this. You can't shout over this. You can't clap and throw your hands up and spin around and avoid the issue, because now here is the third dimension of praise. Lovest thou me more than these? It's a lot easier to teach than it is to do, because it is easy for Sarah to dismiss Hagar because Sarah's not bound by it. I can toss cigarettes in the trash can. I don't smoke. Pour liquor down the drain. I don't need it. I don't want it. Don't have any use for it. Don't care about it. But the things you can give up easily are not the sacrifice. I'm not talking about the stuff that you can easily walk away from. I'm talking about that little crutch you got. The crutch that puts your faith into contradiction. You said God could do anything. You said, Lord, I'll never deny you. But the Lord said, you know what, before the cock crows, you're going to do that again. Contradiction. Now, here's Abraham's dilemma, because there is no question here. He is bond to the bondwoman and her son, because Abraham has waited all of his life to have a son. And Hagar brings him a son, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. There is no doubt that there is an attachment to this son, but this whole son issue for Abraham is a mistake. And now Abraham has had Isaac, which is a miracle. And his mistake and his miracle are both growing up together. See, life works out better when you can put the mistakes over here and the miracles over there. But isn't it a mess when they both grow up together? Third point I want you to see, there is a while that you can get your mistake and your miracle to live together in the same house without one making fun of the other. But sooner or later, your mistake will mock your miracle. To have your mistake say to your miracle, I thought you were the child of God. I thought you were supposed to be so saved. I thought you had great victory in your life. Then why? Have you ever had two contradictory things existing and both of them was your kids? One of them was born out of the flesh and the other one was born out of the spirit, and you couldn't deny neither one of them because both of them looked like you. Now, it's one thing for you to say, no, this is the devil's baby, but no, this is not the devil's baby. This is your baby. The devil didn't do this to you, Flip Wilson. You did this to yourself. This is your child. And now Abraham's right and Abraham's wrong have run into each other, and now they're mocking each other. And God says, you have come to a crossroad. I found out later that when God does turn the light on you, he generally doesn't take anything away from you. He doesn't put out your Hagar or dismiss your Ishmael. You have to do that. Somebody else can come along and tell you what you ought to do, but when it all boils down, you're the one that has to do it. Because when you do it, it becomes the sacrifice. Since you are the one born to it, you can have all that dancing and you can have all of that hooping and running all down the aisle, because above all of that demonstration you do on the outside, if you really want God's glory to fall on your life, stop dancing over stuff that you need to make a decision about and give God the sacrifice. Jesus told you, until you deny mother, father, sister, brother, and even deny yourself, you cannot be my disciple. He told you, pick up your cross and follow me. Did you really think he was talking about wood?